everybody, how you doing? Welcome to another episode of Film Banter. This is episode 90, if you can believe it. Well, you're going to notice that I have a different co-host this evening. This is my father, Russ. Russ Picard, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure to be here.
He's been wanting to come on the show to do a very special segment with us. So let's get to the elephant in the room, or the elephant that's not in the room. Daryl. So where's Daryl tonight, you might be asking yourself. Well, let's put it this way. Daryl had some things going on tonight, and he graciously offered to bow out this evening for reasons that I will know more detail of very shortly. He actually left me a voicemail that I haven't listened to yet. I'm going to listen to it on the air in a moment here. But my dad is going to be with us this evening. We're going to be doing a pretty much another theme show. This one's going to be all about the career of Mr. Clint Eastwood. He's had a very varied career, a long career, a very distinguished career, and we're going to have a good time talking about him. We're first going to start the show. We're going to review the new film that's in theaters, Searching, starring John Cho. And then we're going to go right into the career of Clint Eastwood. So we're going to start that in a couple minutes. But let's see what Daryl had to say in the voicemail here. I'm going to put it on speaker so everybody can kind of get an idea of the circumstances that kept him from joining us tonight. I am going to get a little visual representation here of Mr. Smith so everybody knows what he looks like here. Pardon the interruption here. There he is. Wonderful photo of Mr. Daryl here. His nostrils are flared really beautifully. But let's hear this voicemail. Let's see what's going on. I hope he's all right.
You have one unheard message. First unheard message. Curtis, somebody called the medics on me up. I'm over at the Broadway psychiatric ward. I need help, man. They're coming for me. They're gonna tie me up. Listen, I just wanted to wish you and your dad have a great Clint Eastwood show tonight. I hope everything goes well. I'm sure it's gonna suck because I'm not there. But listen, I wish you guys said that. Oh, get your hands off of me! Get your hands off of me! You're not filthy!
Oh, goodness.
End of message. To delete this.
Wow.
Saved for
Well, I can't say I'm surprised. You know, he's definitely a character. He gets himself in trouble fairly often. So
That picture there almost reminds me of a picture of James Cagney saying, "You dirty rat."
You dirty rat. Yeah, I can
Does
see
it?
that. Yeah, he's pointing at somebody. I don't remember. This was obviously recently taken in our studio down in Secaucus at the Be Terrific Studios. Obviously, we're not there right now. We've been the past few weeks back to our roots. We spent the past 2 weeks in Daryl's house doing 2 shows. Tonight, we're actually in my father's home. This is the home that I grew up in. We thought it'd be a nice spot to do our show this evening. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to get right to it. So let's get here. We're going to start talking about Searching in a moment. So if you guys are not familiar with Searching, this is Searching. So this is a film, like I said, starring John Cho, who you might know from Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle, and most recently he's the new Sulu in the Star Trek films. And then we have him pretty much getting a lot more work. Now he's getting dramatic work, like in this movie, Searching. If you don't know the storyline, it's pretty simple. He is a father of a 16-year-old high school student who goes missing. And through the course of the film, he tries to figure out what happened to her. And he learns, as the story progresses, that maybe he doesn't know his daughter as well as he thought he did. And that's the story. There are some twists and turns and some surprises. The gimmick, the interesting element of this film that actually really works is that the story is told through screens. It's mostly computer screens, a FaceTime screen on an iPhone, a video chat, news footage from the local news following the disappearance of his daughter. And it's all done maybe through also some text message threads and Messenger on Facebook conversations, a lot of Facebook, some Instagram, a lot of internet sites that are shown. It's all done through screens. It's a very inventive way to tell a story. So at first I was a little skeptical, but it really worked. So my father and I, we went together to see the film yesterday, and we're going to tell you how it was. So what did you think?
Well, first of all, when you first mentioned to me the film, Searching, and would I like to come and see it, and you mentioned the fact that a lot of it was done on a computer screen and I said to myself, how can this be interesting? This doesn't sound like something that you could really build a movie on. Well, I was certainly surprised when we got there and the movie started, and you were immediately drawn and focused right into the computer screen, with, of course, the dialogue of the actors, the father constantly searching for clues as to where his daughter might be, who she might be with.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that I was just lost in the story, and a lot of it was because of that computer screen and the fact that you were just riveted to it, and you really followed the dad as he went through various names and various things to find his daughter. It was a well acted show, a movie rather. It was a very good story, had a lot of twists and turns. I really highly recommend it. I was very, very surprised, not to be redundant, that it was that good a movie, considering we had a computer screen right there. Because I'm no IT guy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can run my computer and all of that, but the idea of seeing a movie where a lot of it was a computer screen, I said, oh man, that's going to drive me crazy. But it didn't. It was so much a part of the movie. I can't emphasize enough how much an interesting, once again, vehicle that
Mm-hmm.
was, that really made the movie.
I agree. I mean, I was a little also not hesitant to see the film, but it wasn't something that upon initially seeing the trailers that I was really dying to see. But the more I saw clips of it, and the more I read about the reviews it's getting, the good reception it got, I believe it's Sundance this year, my interest was piqued. And so I said, I want to go see this. And so I thought you'd appreciate it. And I was really riveted by this film. It took a little bit to get into it, but once you're into the main crux of the story, you're hooked. You're in there with him as he's searching for his daughter. The false leads, or maybe the breadcrumbs that are going to lead to what happened, the twists and all this kind of stuff. And I was really, really captivated by
Oh,
this.
absolutely. And I thought one of the things that was incredible in the film was, as it progresses, you see this poor father who is just so worried and heartbroken and devastated by the fact that they can't find his daughter,
Yeah.
that he is a very brilliant guy himself. He works for a lab, and I don't remember exactly what he does, but he's a very smart guy. And if it wasn't for him in the film uncovering some leads, they would never have found out what happened to his daughter. And once again, it was done because of his skill on the computer and putting two and two together. But really, outthinking the police, and I don't want to say too much about it for anyone who wants to see the movie, but he plays an integral part in actually solving
His own
the
family mystery. Yeah.
and finding.
He does. And
Yeah.
John Cho's very good. I've enjoyed him ever since I first saw him. I believe the first time I saw him was in this comedy called Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. It's kind of a weed smokers comedy. They're this crazy, all these things happen to these guys in this search for junk food, basically. And he's really evolved to be a very capable, very talented actor. And he really played this part, I thought, perfectly. He's very believable as this distraught father.
Yes.
You know, there's other things that happen in the film I'm not going to get into, but he's carrying us each step of the way, and we're there with him, and you really sympathize with this guy. And it was just a very effective film. Simple. It's very simple.
It is.
You know, but it works. It works really well.
And
Highly recommend it.
He did a very good job of projecting that incredible, awful frustration as a father, and of course as a dad who has 3 children, grown children, of course. I remember times where my daughter Christina, we couldn't find her when she was a little kid.
Yeah,
she
yeah.
was actually hiding in the
Scary.
bed under the covers.
I remember that
But
vividly.
when I was looking at the movie the other morning rather, that flashback in my head, and I remember that horrible feeling of fear and anxiety. Where is my child? Did someone steal? Where is she?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this actor, and I only know him from
Star Trek. Yeah.
Star Trek,
Yeah.
did a terrific job of conveying that devastating feeling and that frustration with everyone that's working on the cases. What's going on? Where is my daughter?
Exactly.
And this
Yeah.
frustration, you really, really felt. So he did a terrific job as an actor in this film.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I really don't have any negative critiques of the film. I thought the pace was good. It didn't feel long. I was never bored. and once we got to the conclusion, I was satisfied, you know, and I was really, really happy with.
But what
with
was
the outcome.
surprising?
Well, yeah. I mean, I didn't expect the
Which
film to go.
anyone who sees the film will see.
We're not going to spoil anything,
No.
but it's interesting to see where the film goes. You might want to scoot over a little bit this way, just a tad.
Okay.
But yeah, we recommend two big yeses here for Searching, and you'll really enjoy it. I really think it's going to be a little gem. I think it's going to be a word of mouth film that people are going to slowly learn about from friends and family, and hopefully the film will stay in theaters for a bit so everybody can see it, because it's really better than a lot of the stuff that's out. It's a good little movie.
One of the things I wanted to add was I was thinking of the other players
Mm-hmm.
in the movie, and the young lady that plays his daughter
Yeah.
obviously doesn't have an extremely big part, but I thought she did a very good job
She's
of
very good.
of
Her name
projecting.
is, Michelle Lai is her name.
Yeah, projecting.
Let's find a shot of her here. I
Yeah,
think she's
let's
in here
take a look at
somewhere.
her.
I have a shot of her in this little thing here. Let's go to the next shot. I don't know why there she is. So she's the one on the left, and that's her mother in the film, who's also very good. She's played by Sarah Sohn, I believe is how you say
Well,
her
she did
name.
a very good job
Yeah.
of. You're kind of wondering what she's up to.
Yeah, exactly.
And she was able to display that with really minimal dialogue.
Yeah.
And it was just really by watching her and seeing her reactions, and you wonder what is going on with this
Yeah.
girl. So
It's like this film is kind of like it unravels and you're peeling away the layers of an onion and you're getting
Oh,
deeper
yeah.
and deeper into the storyline, but also deeper and deeper into who this young girl was and what are the things that led to her disappearance. And so it's very interesting. It's not your typical, kidnap thriller or disappearance of a child thriller. It's different, and obviously the mechanism of seeing the film through the screens, all the different elements of our technology, and how they're such a part of our daily lives, especially the youth of today. It was very effective, and it's an interesting commentary on where we're at with technology and how much we've allowed it to be a part of our lives. And if you think about, if it wasn't for that, he might have not been able to put the pieces of the puzzle together the way that he did.
but on the other hand, it's on a negative point in terms of the computer is how, and I don't want to go into all of the details, how initially everyone is fooled.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Fooled in
By
terms
some of the things they found.
By some of the things that they found in the computer that kind of throws everything off balance.
Yeah.
So computers, to me, it's like a mixed blessing. In one way, we've made it sort of indispensable to our lives.
Yeah.
And in another way, it kind of takes away from kids talking more to each other. And that's a whole other story.
It's a whole other story. It's another conversation.
Anyway, see the movie.
Check out Searching. Two high recommendations here. Two big yeses. I think it's definitely worth your time, and you'll really enjoy it. I really would be surprised to hear people say they don't like this film, because I thought it was very good. But we're going to leave it at that. We're going to move on now to our segment of the night. We're going to go to our Clint Eastwood segment here. Let me pull up some imagery here to kind of move us along visually through this whole little thing. And we'll have a good time looking at everything here with Mr. Eastwood. But while I get this set, if you want to begin, tell us a little bit about the origins of Clint's life, where he started.
First of all, like most viewers, you like Clint Eastwood. How could you not like him? In all the years that I've watched his films, as I was growing up in the 60s, I noticed within a few years that there wasn't any movies that he did that I saw that weren't good stories, that weren't good movies. But I never really thought about Clint Eastwood himself, where he came from, how he got into business. So very briefly, I'm just going to give you a little overview of that, because it'll become quite apparent as I go into this as to how important his early years were in terms of his film work. He was born in May of 1930 in San Francisco, and it was a year after the Great Depression, 1929. And he had a sister, Jean, a younger sister, and mother and father. Clinton was his dad's name, Ruth was his mom's name. And because of the Depression, they had to move around a lot. So in Clint's very formative years, from when he was born up till 1949, the family was constantly moving around California. His dad worked as a migrant worker, worked as a steel worker. But in 1949, they finally were able to put down roots. Dad got a good job in a suburb of the Bay Area called Piedmont, California. And apparently his dad had a pretty good job because they lived on the nice part of town, or city actually, and had a swimming pool.
Nice.
But then Clint obviously went to school, was not a standout student, which he readily admits, but he always found that he was like the new kid in school up until 1949. And he felt that he was kind of like a lonely kid. You know, he always was getting to know new people.
And that's an interesting foreshadowing for where his career would go.
Very much so.
In many ways, yeah.
Very much so. And he grew up until he was 19, 20, and was drafted in the Army. And this is a very interesting point. When he was drafted in the Army, he was stationed in Fort Ord, California.
I didn't know he was in the Army. That's cool.
Yeah, drafted in the Army. And interestingly, he spent the whole time he was in the Army at Fort Ord, California, as a lifeguard. Of all things, a lifeguard. That was quite surprising to me. I never heard that one before.
Yeah, who would think that there was even that much swimming going on that you'd need a lifeguard?
No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't think that.
You could understand maybe if it was Navy SEAL training, they'd have to be in the water.
And you would naturally think you'd be transferred somewhere during the Korean War. But he wasn't transferred anywhere. But this was an interesting, good omen for him, because one of his fellow soldiers in civilian life happened to have very, very important contacts in Hollywood. Clint had had no acting experience at all. But when he got out of the Army, he followed through and went down to Hollywood. And this particular person had some contacts at Universal Studios. Well, Clint, of course, was a tremendously stunning, handsome man. And, of course, that was the reason that this fellow soldier thought of Clint in terms of being a movie actor. Well, Clint never really had given that a thought at all about being an actor. He did spend maybe a year or so in college. That didn't work. So he goes down to Hollywood, goes to auditions. They liked his looks. His looks were terrific, but they said he was very wooden. He talked with his teeth clenched, which he did most of his career, which worked very well. But he was told to please get some acting lessons, and they hired him as a contract player for $100 a week.
Wow.
You're talking probably about 1954.
Yeah, I mean, that was a good amount of money, I guess, back then, you know. I don't know what the equivalent would be today, but...
Yeah. He said that he got by pretty well on $100 a week. We laugh at that now. You're lucky if you can get by on $100 a day.
Exactly.
But he was in a lot of very forgettable movies. He was in a sequel to The Creatures of the Black Lagoon, which I remember.
Was that Night of the Creature? Because I saw.
Yeah.
I have a picture in here in my little collage here.
That's what it was.
Montage here that has a shot. It looked like he played a druggist or something. He was in a white coat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So he played, you know, some very, very small parts. But he was starting to get experience.
And he got his big break, right?
And he got his big break in 1958 with a series that was just coming on TV called Rawhide. Now, I, of course, being Chris's dad, was brought up in the 60s, and I remember the series very well.
Yeah.
It went from 1958 for 7 years, so 1965.
Now, when you were watching that show as it was on the air back then, did you say to yourself, oh, this guy Clint Eastwood is interesting, or did you not take note of him until he was in films?
Well,
was he noticeable? Like, you could tell that somebody was going to be a star?
Yes, he played a character called Rowdy Yates, and he was one of the leads in the show. And I kind of got the feeling that he was headed towards stardom. You looked at him, you couldn't take your eyes off the guy. He was very handsome looking. They gave him very interesting dialogue. But this 7 years really was Clint's introduction to acting.
Like acting boot camp.
This was acting boot camp for him personified. But one of the other things that attracted him about movie making was directing.
Yeah.
And he was fascinated by how they directed the various episodes. They did 217 episodes. They didn't let him direct any of the episodes. They did let him direct some of the trailers.
Okay.
But after 7 years on Rawhide, he was exhausted because they were 12-hour days, 6 days a week, and although he was making good money at the time, and settled himself up in a house in Carmel, California, he was tired of the good guy image. He didn't want to be typecast with the guy with the white hat. So once again, by chance, a filmmaker from Italy called Sergio Leone
There you go.
was in Hollywood, where he hardly went at all, to do some editing. I was not able to research exactly, specifically what he was doing, but he wasn't filming a movie, but he was looking at a film that was done. He was doing some editing here. But he had seen a couple episodes of Rawhide and was very impressed with Clint Eastwood's looks. And he asked Clint Eastwood, he hardly spoke any English at all, which must have been very hysterical. And Clint, of course, didn't speak any Italian, but he was telling him that he was going to do a movie in Italy, and he thought he'd be perfect for it, Fistful of Dollars.
And that was the beginning of the Dollars trilogy that launched him into the consciousness of filmgoers, because then they followed it up with for a few dollars more.
Yeah.
And then obviously probably the crescendo of the trilogy was The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which made him, I would say, a star, until obviously Dirty Harry. But he had a bunch of other films that came out
and he
between
said,
those two
absolutely.
landmark roles.
And he said that he had never been to that part of the world, and he said, why not? Let's go, why not? Let me spread my wings. Well, the interesting thing that I got out of my research here was, because he didn't speak any Italian, and the director, Sergio Leone, didn't speak any English, I often wondered if that was one of the reasons why there was very little dialogue for Clint Eastwood in these movies.
Yeah.
It was basically acting is reacting. And here you had wore the hat, the cigar, no name. So he was a fascinating character, but he still was a kind of like a good guy. He was rescuing people, but
he was.
You saw a completely different side of Clint Eastwood as compared to Rawhide.
Yeah.
And that, once again, as you said, brought into the moviegoer's consciousness, once again, Clint Eastwood in a different venue, in a different situation. And then, of course, he was so fascinated with directing, and when he got back to the West Coast, one of the first things he did was set up his own production company called Malpazzo.
Yeah, it started out
Malpaso,
as the Malpaso company at first, and then it changed names, I believe in the mid-'80s, to Malpaso Productions.
Yeah.
But for a good run, he produced a lot of movies under the Malpaso company's banner.
Which is interesting. I often wondered what that meant. Well, I looked it up, and it meant bad step in Spanish.
Yeah.
Now, it also was the name of a creek.
That's right, in California.
That ran behind Clint's property in Carmel, California.
It's very interesting. I love the personal touches that a lot of these people do when they come up with a production company name. You pick something that's either fairly obvious to you or something that means something to you that's worth giving. Some things just ring true. Oh, that sounds like the perfect name for my company. Sometimes it's just like a eureka moment. Oh, it's so simple. It's the creek. Let's do it. So that's cool. And it's kind of got along with his image. He's given us all these films under this banner, Malpaso, and it's become a signature.
Absolutely.
And it's become a signature of quality. And that's Clint Eastwood. That's his company. And
that's interesting.
It's interesting.
It's interesting to say that because for the past several years I've noticed, And being a guy who loves music, having played a trumpet all my life.
Are you going to do a solo for us later?
Oh yes, I'll do a solo for you later, since I picked it up again after 15 years. No, but my point here is that I noticed with Clint Eastwood's movies, he always seems to have some very, very pretty, beautiful music, very pretty, nice music as a theme. And a lot of the time there's a lot of poignancy in his movies. I noticed that he always does a very good story. I found very few movies that I've seen that he was in where there wasn't a good story with very strong characters. Now, what I wanted to bring in is the fact that because of when he was brought up, right after or during the Depression from 1929 for 6-7 years, a lot of the movies he chose to do involved characters that were lonely, that were needy, that needed rescuing, and that his character to be the one to kind of rush in almost at the last moment and rescue them. And he always thought that a lot of that had to do with the fact that he was brought up in the Depression era, where he knew a lot of people that were needy. He knew a lot of people that needed rescuing. And that he always wanted to do a movie that was not. He always wanted to do movies that weren't superficial, that had depth to them, and so then we're going to have to get to Dirty Harry.
Well, of course, yeah. But to touch on the music element, you were saying that.
Yeah, go ahead.
That maybe some people might not know that he does a lot of the music for the films. He's an accomplished pianist. His son Kyle is a musician who contributes a lot of music to his films as well.
As does a guy named Lenny Nieheis. Who does a lot of.
He's got this core group of people that he uses. I mean, most filmmakers, they develop a whole crew of people, a family of artists that help them on all their projects. And you'll notice that a lot of the times they're going to have the same crew members from film to film. The same thing goes especially for the director of photography or your cinematographer, to your set designer, to your costume designer, your composer, your producers. All these people are vital parts of your team. And you develop a shorthand after a while, and you can really expedite the filmmaking process in some regard by having that shorthand in place, where you're not learning how to adapt to all these different techniques and personality traits each film that comes along. You already got that shorthand there, and you can just, okay, how do we get this scene done? How do we get this movie done? And the same thing goes for actors that work with a lot of the same directors and vice versa. De Niro and Scorsese worked together many times. Now Scorsese and Leonardo DiCaprio worked together many times. Frank Marshall always worked with Hector Elizondo. That was his favorite actor. You'll see a lot of actors. David Lynch works with Kyle MacLachlan, and so on and so on. You just develop this shorthand and this style of working that just helps to accomplish the goals of each scene, each shooting day, and then the arc of the film and the completion of the film as a whole. It just works out really well.
Well, Clint Eastwood had emphasized many times the fact that he likes to work with the same crew that he knows so well. It's like a well-oiled machine. And one of the things that he mentioned too is that he didn't want to work the crew or the actors to death. He didn't want 12-hour days anymore like he had on Rawhide.
It's crazy.
He wanted to just be a relaxed set, casual set. And he's an actor's director in that he's very, very willing to take suggestions from the actors if they have a good suggestion. As a matter of fact, Tim Robbins, who was one of the main characters on the movie Mystic River, which was one of his favorites and one of my favorites, said that he thought that Clint was a true artist in every way. He has a relaxed set. He not only listens to direction, but he respects the actors tremendously, makes you feel very relaxed, and makes you feel very good that you're really wanted on the set, that you really value it on the set, is more, I think, what I want to say.
Which is good, because there's a lot of times that an actor can be kind of left on their own, and sometimes in a bad way on a film. You might not be able to give a suggestion, because film is very much a director's medium. It's not an actor's medium. The actor's medium, they're at home on the stage. But in film, you're there to service the story, service the director. So, you got to be there on your game, know your lines, and hope that you'll be able to have multiple takes. And in terms of being able to play a little bit.
And one of the ways he's been able to personify this way of filmmaking is the fact that he doesn't do a tremendous amount of takes.
Yeah.
He doesn't like to do a tremendous amount of rehearsals because he wants a fresh performance.
Spontaneous, yeah.
Yeah,
To
spontaneous.
feel organic and not rushed. A lot of directors will just film the rehearsals and see what happens. And then there was somebody like Sidney Lumet, who was famous for just doing one take. He'll have weeks of rehearsal, and then he'll shoot each scene once. Okay, we're good. And then there's directors that, like David Fincher, for example, Stanley Kubrick, you'll get your 200 to 300 takes of something as simple as somebody going through a door. There's actors like
that would drive me crazy.
Yeah, Harvey Keitel walked off of Kubrick's last film, Eyes Wide Shut, because he was frustrated. He goes, I got to walk through a door 100 times. He walked off, and then Sidney Pollack, the director, sometimes actor, stepped in and played the role in his place. So there's something to be said for having that mentality of having been an actor. So you know exactly another element of what your team needs to be able to get through the day. And I don't think you necessarily need to do 100 takes. If you're prepared, if everybody from the director to the cinematographer to the actors to the set dressers, if everybody's prepared, and you have things very well worked out, there's no reason you can't get it done in a reasonable amount of takes. 10 takes.
When I was looking, doing my research on all of this, when Clint Eastwood did the movie Bridge Over Madison County.
Bridges of Madison County, yeah, with Meryl Streep, yeah.
With Meryl Streep. Initially, she didn't like the script at all.
Yeah.
But then after, I don't know whether they rewrote it a couple times, whatever, she decided to do the movie. But he made a comment about, like when you meet someone for the first time, it's very fresh, it's very new. So he said, with someone like Meryl Streep and himself, so experienced, he said, we didn't necessarily have to rehearse on some of these things, on some of the different scenes, because we would just go right into it, and it was new. There was ad-libbing that was done, but that of course can only be done with people as experienced and as good as Meryl Streep,
of course,
and Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, you have these professionals that they're on their game every moment of the day. So it makes your job as a filmmaker that much easier. One of the famous things that you've recounted over the years is something that Spencer Tracy would always say about the craft. He would just say, know your lines and don't bump into the furniture.
And it's so true.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Knowing your lines, you'd think that would be elementary, but there's a lot of people out there that don't come as prepared as they should. I mean, you and I, we've acted, we both act, and
we're always prepared.
Yeah, I mean, and I've worked with people that didn't know their lines, and it makes the job that much harder. Or they know their lines, but they can't stay in character. They break the scene, or they'll just start giggling or something, or they'll miss a line, and then they'll just start ad-libbing to the point that it takes the scene in another direction. You got to stop. You got to be prepared. You got to know your lines. I mean, everybody forgets a line once in a while. That happens. But if you're prepared and you're in the scene and you know your character, you know what you're doing, it just makes the whole process so much easier for everybody.
Oh, absolutely. And
then you get these professionals that are there, and you can tell the difference right away. Meryl Streep walks on set. It must be an amazing experience to somebody who's maybe fresher in the industry. They get a little nervous. Oh, wow, this is Meryl Streep, or this is Clint Eastwood. I'm on a Clint Eastwood film. I still think that there's a lot of actors that probably get a little bit of butterflies. Oh my goodness, I'm working on a Clint Eastwood film. Tom Hanks worked with him for the first time a couple of years ago on Sully. And I'm sure that was a great collaboration, but maybe both sides were maybe were they apprehensive or maybe not. Maybe when you're on that level you don't be, but I don't know. I'd like to think that somebody like a Clint Eastwood can still cause a little bit of pause when you walk into the room with him, regardless of who you are. Because he's a legend, as you've said, he's an icon, and you take the history of cinema from the beginning to today, and you say, let's make a list of the 50 biggest movie stars of all time, Clint Eastwood, I would argue, would be in the top 10. At least.
I would think so.
Got to be in the top 10.
One of the things
Who's number one? That's up for debate. But he's a huge star.
he likes to keep things simple.
Yeah.
Let's not complicate something that doesn't have to be complicated.
I agree.
Because when you think about what we've been talking about and reflect upon some of the basic points we've made, if you have a casual, relaxed set, you're going to have actors that are going to be more relaxed. If you're keeping things simple, you're not doing a tremendous amount of takes, you're keeping the actors more fresh. You're not exhausting them. You're not working 12 hours.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're going to get better performances. So it's almost like, why doesn't everyone do this?
Well, it comes down to one thing: economics. The studios, and all the different production companies that have to come together to get a film's budget in place. You have all these, as we like to say, bean counters in the situation,
Right.
having an opinion. Everybody wants to get the movie done as soon as possible. They don't want to have too many days. A lot of directors have walked off, when they're negotiating with the studios or whatever, or their financiers to get their budget in place. There'll be arguments about, well, we need you to get this movie done in 45 days. Well, the director could be like, listen, I know what I need to do to get this film done, and I can't do it in under 60 days, or whatever the number might be. And so there have been films that have fallen apart because they can't agree on the days, because you think how much money is on the line per day, how much it's costing them per day. Because you have all these crazy expenses that, in my opinion, a lot of it is frivolous waste. They waste so much money in so many areas that you could revisit and maybe save some bucks. That's why somebody like Clint Eastwood, who's notoriously coming in early and under budget, that's almost unheard of. There's only a few directors that can come in under budget.
In the beginning, first of all, when he developed his own production company, Malpazzo, and he started to do movies for Universal and Warner Brothers.
His first film was 1971, Play Misty for Me. And then obviously that was a big year because he also starred in obviously Dirty Harry that year, and I believe The Beguiled came out. So he had a busy year.
Dirty Harry.
Yeah.
He directed some of them.
I think
and
he directed
Don
Siegel, who became one of his mentors. He's worked with Don Siegel. I believe he worked together 5 times.
You know where he met Don Siegel? Don Siegel was a contract director for Universal.
Yeah.
So he met Clint way back when, and
became good friends.
Don
Siegel mentored other people too. There was one other big name that I read that he mentored, and I forget, it'll come to me. But Don Siegel, I just watched Play Misty for Me for the first time, which was his.
He did a cameo.
Yeah, it was his directorial debut, and Siegel played the bartender. And it was funny, I read as a joke.
I didn't know that, I gotta see that again.
As a joke, he made Siegel do a take 10 times, then he turned the camera on. He didn't tell him that they weren't rolling. So he did that as a practical joke to Don Siegel.
It'd be interesting to see Siegel's response.
Yeah, they seem like they're really close, so you knew he could get away with it. But yeah, I mean, I was very impressed, to talk about Play Misty for a moment, by the film being his first time as a director, directing a feature. It was really well done. It was a tense movie. For those of you who don't know Play Misty for Me, briefly, it's just he plays a disc jockey in ironically, Carmel by the Sea, which is where he lived. He convinced the studio to let him make the film and make it in his backyard for the most part, and he did, and made it for $750,000. It ended up grossing $10 million. In the film, though, he plays a disc jockey who has an obsessed fan introduce herself to him. They have a brief affair, and he starts learning that this woman is unhinged, and she starts stalking him basically, and it gets kind of to a fever pitch as his old romantic love interest, his ex-girlfriend, comes back into the picture, and it makes things complicated. And this was pre-Fatal Attraction. This was a lot of these type of stalker films, and so I know this film was definitely influential for those kind of movies. But it was very well done. It must have been very shocking when it came out at times because it was kind of creepy. The Jessica creepy. Walter, is it Walter? I think it's Walter. Yeah. Walters that plays.
She plays
Evelyn, the stalker. Yeah. She's excellent. She's scary. And I hated her in this movie. She did such a good job. She's just in his life, and he can't seem to shake her. It was a very effective film that I've heard you mention throughout my youth. You and Mom would be watching it or whatever, and I remember hearing about it, but I'd never seen it. It was a very interesting film, very effective. I was very into it. I was really sucked into it. And he was really good in it.
Now, in listening to your talk, I'm
Yeah.
thinking about the fact that it was his directorial debut.
Yeah, he did a good job with that. A lot of good shots.
He obviously, in 7 years on Rawhide, to mention that once again, was a tremendous student, a tremendous observer. He would really paid extremely close attention to how the directing was being done. So you can imagine the hundreds and thousands of different angles and shots and stuff that, that he was in and watched to learn a craft. Not everyone can be a director. Just because Gene Hackman was a wonderful actor
doesn't mean he could.
Doesn't mean he could have been a great director
Exactly.
or wanted to be a director.
Yeah.
But I think that as someone who's acted in a couple of films myself and been in theater groups and acted in school, you certainly want someone who has done some acting themselves, because they know what it's like to be in your shoes. They can see the other side, and I think once again it just creates a better atmosphere.
Yeah,
it really does. And well, let's go on. Do you want to?
Well, yeah. I mean, we know that Dirty Harry, after the Man with No Name trilogy, kind of sent him into the stratosphere of stardom. He became a household name, and then he made 5 Dirty Harry films altogether. And then he started doing other things. He still did westerns. He would still go do one once in a High Plains Drifter. He did Pale Rider, Outlaw Josie Wales.
We can, just for one second, just go back to Dirty Harry for just
sure.
a minute.
We can linger on Dirty Harry for a minute. It's okay.
No, I don't mean to interrupt, but a couple of points. First of all,
there's his favorite, All for Unforgiven.
Ah,
yeah, his favorite.
When we get to Unforgiven, the hell if they tell me to shut up.
Yeah.
But once again, I have to mention, because it was so integral to making him such a wonderful director and actor, the Rawhide. That was tremendous exposure for him. Tremendous exposure. A series that was on every week for 7 years. It had 217 episodes, as I mentioned before. Then he did the spaghetti westerns, as they're called. So that by this time, everyone knows who Clint Eastwood is.
Oh, yeah.
And then along comes Dirty Harry, and I never knew for years why they called it Dirty Harry.
Oh, yeah.
And you would think I would have wondered.
Yeah, well, they do mention it in the original film, but it's probably been many years since I've seen the original.
And they call it Dirty Harry because they give him all the dirty jobs.
Exactly.
And the thing that's such a contradiction is that Dirty Harry, Harry Callahan, is kind of a lonely character. The character he plays lost his wife, is a terrific cop, but he's constantly ruffling the feathers of the commissioner,
the mayor,
the people, the mayor, because of, I mean, he gets things done, but in even back in the 70s, in a political correct society that seemed to be starting even then, he couldn't stand the bureaucracy that existed. You know, you tell me to get things done, I get them done, and then you're yelling and screaming at me because we had a couple of cars wrecked or a couple of windows were broken. So you kind of felt for him as a character. This poor guy has his hands tied.
Yeah.
But the character he played was such a strong character. The movies themselves were good. The stories were good.
Yeah.
The other players were very good. To me, it was a perfect film for him to be in.
Yeah.
And I remember after seeing the first Dirty Harry thinking, I wonder if they'll make a sequel.
Oh, yeah.
And they made 5.
They made 5 altogether. Yeah, they did. So it was Dirty Harry. We had The Enforcer. We had Magnum Force. We had Sudden Impact. And then the last one he did was, I believe, 1988, the Deadpool. That was the last one. But throughout all that period, you know, when he was doing a lot of these Dirty Harry movies, you know, which were sporadic, but he was still going back, like we were saying, to some of the westerns. But then he would try other things. He did Bronco Billy. He did White Hunter Black Heart, which was a bank heist movie. He was a thief along with Jeff Bridges. I'm sorry, that was Thunderbolt and Lightheart. Yeah, the other one I was mentioning, White Hunter Black Heart. He's a film director in Africa. You know, he did comedies. He did the very successful Every Which Way But Loose and Every Which Way You Can, the two monkey movies.
And Every Which Way But Loose was one of his top grossing films of all time.
Yeah, and then I think as an actor, I don't know what it would be today as an actor. Maybe that still stands. I know as a filmmaker, American Sniper had become his biggest hit as a filmmaker, as a director, with Bradley Cooper in the role, which was a very good film. But it's funny, you know, you see a lot of people that have worked with him many times in the two Any Which Way movies with Jeffrey Lewis, who played his brother in the film, his cohort. Yeah. But he worked together with him in other films movies as well.
And some of the other characters
have come through.
Any person that's seen Any Which Way But Loose knows that part of the hilarious part of the movie was part of the movie that was very hilarious was the motorcycle gang.
Yeah,
and some of the guys
like
in the motorcycle gang were in some of his other movies. Mm-hmm. And it's very interesting to note that when you see the outlaw Josie Wales, there are one or two guys, I recognize him. He was in Every Which Way But Loose.
It's true.
And speaking of the outlaw Josie Wales, that was one of his favorites. Mm-hmm. And it's one of my favorite movies. And it's a perfect example of what I mentioned when we started our conversation before about him being someone who initially has lost his family in the war. Yeah. They were killed, and he's very, very bitter. But as the movie progresses, he runs into this older woman and her daughter, and they're moving from Missouri out west to a house that his son had built. He was killed in the war. But he becomes very involved with the family. Yeah. He rescues the family. They're a needy family. Mm-hmm. Once again, he comes in as a rescuer, which lends credence to what I said before about how he grew up.
He kind of almost starts out in some of these films as an anti-hero who then becomes very much so. Why don't we talk about Unforgiven for a moment?
Oh, absolutely.
Unforgiven is probably the quintessential Clint anti-hero who then has to stand up and become the hero. You know, it's a very, very grim, very dark film, very rough movie. It's a classic though. It's one Best Picture.
It's considered by some to be the best Western ever made.
Yeah.
When I read that while doing my research, I said to myself, okay, I've seen the movie a number of times. Mm-hmm. Why is it such a good Western? I said to myself. Well, then as I began to think about it, number one, the story was terrific and very realistic. Mm-hmm. Because when I grew up in the 60s and I went and saw a Western, you had the good guys and you had the bad guys. There wasn't a shady area in between. Whereas in Unforgiven, and mentioned by Clint Eastwood a number of times, there's good and bad in everyone. And there was a gray area with everybody. And even Gene Hackman's character, Bill. Mm-hmm.
Little Bill.
Little Bill. Yeah. The sheriff. He was really not a very nice guy in the film. Yeah. Very horrible guy in the film. So I don't necessarily agree that you can't say there was good and bad. He was mostly bad. Yeah. But so was Will Money, played by Clint Eastwood, who had been a killer and a drunk, killed women and children. Blah blah blah. He was a horrible person. So he met this woman he fell in love with, and she got him off the alcohol. Yeah. And changed his ways entirely.
As they say, you know, behind a good man is a good woman.
Behind a good woman. But the movie was shot in Alberta, Canada. Yeah. And he loved the area. It was a beautiful place to do a Western. Mm-hmm. But the characters were very down-to-earth, needy people themselves. Yeah. And, of course, without going into all of the minutiae, the details of the film, boy, there isn't 1 second in the film that you're bored.
No,
I mean, it's
I would say, though,
terrific movie.
That's one of those things. It kind of moves a little slower for a little bit, but then it picks up. You know, I find that a lot of the films, not a lot, but there are several of his films, I would say, especially the past, let's say, 20 years, where his films are a little slow, and they take some time to get in. It's a slow build, a slow burn, as I like to say. But then usually you're in there, and he's got you, and then you get sucked in. But I will say, if there was one film of his as a director that I didn't care for, was The Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. I mean,
No, I didn't like it
I
either.
appreciate what he was trying to do, but I just felt that was the slowest movie I've ever seen in my life. It was one, maybe something since then has taken it from that mantle, but that was a slow one to sit through. He likes to develop his characters. He likes to, give a lot of flavor and let the story evolve.
I was going to say that when you were mentioning about some of his movies seem to be a little slow when they start. Well, when you look at Unforgiven, in my mind, I didn't mind the fact that it was moving a little slowly because you were being introduced to the characters. His little kids. He was a dirt pig farmer. And you saw him wallowing in the trying to take care of the pigs and the two kids, and you realize that was his life, were his two kids. Because later on, as you learn about what his past was, you say, look at where he went to. Now he's a father with two kids.
Simple life,
Simple life, pig farmer. Then you're introduced to Morgan Freeman as his best friend, who was his partner way back when. And there was some slow conversations. They're riding off to where they're going to, eventually go into big whiskey, little whiskey, whatever it's called. We don't have to really go into all
we don't have to go into the story
but
too
the
much,
whole
but
point, was
very effective film.
By the time you're into the real action of the film, you really know the characters. I mean, Gene Hackman, for one little quick point that we can go on, plays the sheriff, and he's a real horrible guy. But in the movie, he's building a house, and he's a horrible carpenter. Terrible. So you almost say to yourself, why are they even bringing
characterization?
Why are you even bringing that in? But it showed another side of him, and
as an actor, when you go to play a character like that, you hear it time and again when you see actors interviewed for their roles, especially those that have played villainous roles. They'll say, you don't play this character as an evil person or as a bad person. You find the places within the script that inform your choices, so therefore you're playing this part in a way that this character is doing what they feel is right for their own reasons. They have their motivations. So just by saying, I'm going to play this guy as an evil bastard, that's not going to get you the depth of a performance. You need to sit there and figure out, well, where is this guy's humanity? What does he want? What is he willing to do to get it? And then so you look at a film like Unforgiven and a character like Gene Hackman's with those thoughts, and you can really understand, okay, well, this guy, look what he's trying to do. Look what he wants to do. And so in his eyes, he's in the right. And William Money is this notorious evil killer. He's the sheriff, Gene Hackman, and he's got to get this guy out of here, just like he has an issue with Richard Harris in this film, the Brit that he keeps in jail, who's a drunk, and so he's doing what he feels is the right thing. And so you look at those kind of elements, and it must have been a real, interesting challenge for Gene Hackman to play. And he won. I believe he won the Oscar for that.
Clint Eastwood said that he was extremely impressed with Gene Hackman's performance. He said he nailed that character immediately. He said immediately, from the first take.
And Gene is such a good actor. If I were to make a list of...
It's a shame he's not acting anymore.
If I were to make a list of actors that I miss on screen, not that he's dead, but he's getting up there. He's retired for quite some time. I miss Gene Hackman. Gene Hackman and Jack Nicholson, the two that I miss. Basically, they're retired. Especially Gene Hackman. Like, Jack still flirts. He was supposed to be doing a film. He just backed out about a week ago. I was kind of disappointed about it. But Gene he's been lured by directors. Big directors want him to come back and do another film, and he just doesn't want to do it. He hasn't done a film since, I think, 2002 or 2004, one of those 2 years.
How old is he?
He did Welcome to Mooseport. He's in his 80s. I'll tell you right now, he's got to be at least 85. I've always loved him.
He's not much younger than the
and he's somebody who got into the business and got fame or a career much later. You know, in his late 30s, I would say.
What he did before that?
Well, he was working slowly. He was always working, but in terms of getting that big break,
Okay.
he was roommates for a brief period, I believe, with I think was it Dustin Hoffman and him. They might have been roommates for a period, I think. He's 88, Gene Hackman.
Same age as Clint
Yeah.
Eastwood.
He lives over in, I believe he lives in New Mexico. But yeah, so Unforgiven is obviously a classic. He's made so many films. One thing I want to touch on real quick,
Sure.
as we head towards the tailor end here of our little conversation, is that Clint lately has been enjoying making films based on true stories. Most recently, the 1517 to Paris, the story about the attempted terrorist hijacking of a train.
And the soldiers jump in.
Yeah, American Sniper, that was a true story. What was interesting about 15 to 17 to Paris is that he used the real people. The real people who did the deed, who saved the day, played themselves in the film. And I would say for people that have never acted before, they did a decent job. And I thought that was an amazing risk that Clint took. I think it worked. However, that was a movie that really felt like it was stretched to be a feature film. Because they gave us all these little things of when the guys were younger that I just wasn't as interested in. And what we want to see is the saving of the train, you know? So we get glimpses of that as the story moves forward. But anyway, it's still an effective film. I enjoyed it. He did Sully. He did American Sniper, like we said. Jersey Boys was based on a true
Iwo
story.
Jima.
Yes, Flags of Our Fathers, and then Letters from Iwo Jima, the two World War II films that told two perspectives.
From the Japanese
perspective,
side.
and then from the Americans and the Allied forces. Very interesting stuff. So yeah, he's been lingering in true story land for a while, and he's what's next for him is he's got a film that's coming out. I have to imagine next year. It doesn't have a release date yet, but it's in post production called The Mule.
Right, we were
Where
talking about that.
based on a true story, where he would play a 90-year-old horticulturist that is caught transporting, I think, $3 million of drugs for the cartel, and he's caught by either Border Patrol or DEA. So that could be an interesting film. I know Bradley Cooper's in that with him, Diane Wiest. I'm looking forward to that. I always like a new Clint film. And then if I were to think of what some of my favorites are, as I know you and I have mentioned before, we both love True Crime from 1999.
True Crime, Blood Work.
Blood Work from 2002. These
Gran
are films.
Torino.
Gran Torino was the last acting film he did, the last film he directed, where he starred in as well.
I mean,
It's a great movie.
we don't have the time to.
And he was up, I believe, for an Oscar for that movie. Let me confirm that. I'm pretty sure.
The character that he played in Gran Torino, this old crotchety guy, had so much real depth to him once you got into the character. That was fascinating. And one of the things I want to bring in is that Clint, even at this stage of his life, with all of the films that he's done, says on every film that he's done, he learns something new.
Mm-hmm.
He learns from the actors. He learns from directing the film something new, and it's always fun. He says, "I'll continue to do it until it's not fun anymore." He's appeared. My read says, and if I'm off a little bit, blame the internet. He's appeared in 50 films, starred in 42. He directed about 40 of them. 40 films.
Yeah, I mean he's had a good career, and I know I think I was wrong about that Oscar nomination for acting for Gran Torino. For some reason, I thought that was the case. I apologize. I had a statistic that I thought was interesting too, about how many films that he. Yeah, so he starred in 22 of the films that he has directed in, and this new one, The Mule, would be number 23. So he's getting up there in age. I believe he's 87, 88.
88.
Yeah, around that. So, I hope he still is with us for, a decent amount of time.
One movie I wanted to mention, I know the time is going by.
It's all right, we have a couple minutes.
The Million Dollar Baby with,
with Hilary Swank.
Hilary Swank.
Morgan Freeman.
Once again, a needy person. He becomes a surrogate father.
Speaking of Million Dollar Baby, he won 2 Oscars for that, for producing the film and directing Million Dollar Baby. And she won for Best Actress, and Best Supporting went to Morgan Freeman.
And he was her surrogate father.
Yes.
Once again, rescuing someone.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we know how it ends. But it was a terrific movie. She
It
did
was.
a wonderful job.
I
in it.
really want to watch that again because that was a riveting film, and
And
that
the dialogue. Morgan Freeman played it. He was a washed-up fighter, played like the janitor.
Yeah.
And he and Clint Eastwood's character were very good friends.
Yeah.
But the little dialogue, you say, well, it doesn't mean that. All these little things mean a lot.
They do.
These little conversations, you get glimpses into their personalities, and he is so adept in acting and directing that it's almost like perfection. He sees both sides of it,
Mm-hmm.
and
I would
it's
agree.
just amazing. I can't imagine that he's not one of the most well-respected directors.
Oh, he definitely is. I mean, it's like I said before. If you think of the people that have made an impact in cinema, he's up there as an actor for
And
sure.
just think,
And as a director, he's very capable.
and just think if he was
Very
not
talented.
stationed in Fort Ord as a
Yeah.
lifeguard, and had been sent to Korea instead. Number one, he could have been killed.
Yeah.
Number two, maybe not discovered.
He might have not been in the business. We don't know if the aspiration to be in the industry only began once he made that connection with that guy in the military,
Yeah.
or was it something that was in the back of his head that maybe he did some theater in high school? We don't know. I mean, I don't know if the official biography would say that, but regardless, thank God he did, because he's brought us some great films, and he's really evolved as an actor. I've enjoyed watching him in some of his earlier work, and I've enjoyed him as he's older. I think he's gained a lot of flavor, like a wine, as he's gotten older. One of my favorite films of his as an actor was In the Line of Fire, where he plays a Secret Service agent.
That's
a
great
great
movie.
film.
Great movie.
And I love a lot of the ones that he's directed, like we discussed before. He's just a very good presence on screen and behind the camera, and it just you're getting a quality product with him. Some films I like more than others, but regardless, you like him as a person, as a filmmaker. And as an actor, he's done comedy, he's done drama, he's done thriller,
And
he's done action.
And you mentioned Kyle before, and Kyle,
His son, yeah.
For whatever reason, I don't really know. I didn't have time or the inclination at the time to find out why he lives in France.
I didn't know that.
But he lives in France. He's about almost 50 years old,
Okay.
and his daughter Allison
Yeah,
is a director.
she's directing now.
She's
Yeah.
directed.
She was one of the stars in his Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. But
She
didn't-
played in a couple. She
few other
played in a
movies.
movie when he played a cop and they were little kids.
There's a movie that he did.
New
that-
Orleans. It was in New Orleans.
Tightrope. Yeah,
that's
yeah.
it.
She was the daughter in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's. You look at his filmography. He said it. Oh, we just missed a shot from the Night of the Creature. Here's Space Cowboys. A lot of fun. Another movie that he did that's a
He
lot
said
of
he
fun.
loved doing it though because he knew those guys so well.
Oh, they had a great time, and another good one that's an ensemble is Kelly's Heroes, where they're basically they're a bunch of U.S. soldiers that go on a mission in occupied.
That's the one with
Donald Sutherland,
and
you have
a very famous actor that
Yeah.
was married to Elizabeth Taylor. Was in
yeah,
it.
Richard Burton.
Richard Burton was.
It's got
in
a
it.
huge cast. It's a great film, a lot of fun. But Don Rickles.
And that was the last movie that he did. And then after that movie, everything was his own production company. That was the last movie he did.
There wasn't a El Paso production. Is
It
that what you're
wasn't.
saying? Interesting.
It was, and then anything after that was.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and he's done some. There's quite a bit of earlier films that I have to see. He did a World War II film, Where Eagles Dare, which I didn't see. There's a good shot from True Crime. Him and James Woods. James Woods just chews up the scenery in that movie. They have some fun banter.
Oh, that
lot
was,
of fun.
as I told you,
Yeah.
I watched this movie
Dennis
over
Leary.
again today.
It's a great
and
film.
Dennis Leary did a very good job in
Yeah,
this movie too.
it's a very unsung film in my opinion. It's a shame that people don't really talk about that movie. It's really good. He's a journalist in a California town, a reporter who's an alcoholic, and he's trying to save a young guy from death row, from being electrocuted.
Yeah.
And he goes against the clock. It's one of those movies that takes place in like a 24-hour period or 12-hour period. It's a fascinating
and
movie.
the last 15, 20 minutes of the movie, very suspenseful.
Very suspenseful. Yeah.
Where the guy was going to be put to death wrongfully.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
Will he
they
be saved or
just
won't he?
save him.
It's great. Yeah.
But so it was once again a reflection of the fact that Clint Eastwood doesn't do junk.
No.
He
I
does
agree.
very, very good stories. and it makes a hell of a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Why would a moviegoer want to go see a story that's not good?
Yeah.
But, you know, he's long since not needed the money.
Exactly. There's a shot from Unforgiven.
Yeah, Unforgiven.
Him and Morgan. He's just great. It's kind of silly, but you know, was that expression? He's the cat's pajamas.
Oh, yeah.
He's just great. You know,
Cat's meow.
Cat's meow that too. I always say it's a better world with Clint Eastwood in it. I enjoy him. I'll be sad when he goes, but he's lived a heck of a life. He's brought a lot of joy to a lot of people's lives, a lot of entertainment, and you know, his legacy will live on through his work, through his kids.
He's got a bunch of kids. He's got 7 or 8 kids.
He's got a good family. He's got a big family. Yeah. So, you know, he's just an icon.
Like I was talking before, the hat and the cigar.
Exactly.
Fistful of dollars or
For a few dollars more.
more. Very little.
The bad and the ugly.
And that had to have been a great experience as an actor where there was very little dialogue. So we had to do a lot of reacting.
And you do all your acting here, you know, in your face.
All acting there.
And that's sometimes is the hardest to do because you throw a line out and you can project with that.
He can say something like taking the cigar out and throwing it away.
Yeah, and that's
saying something. Saying something.
Non-verbal acting is
Non-verbal
sometimes the
acting.
hardest stuff to do. That's why the silent era was so important for actors back in the silent era to be reactive, to show us the emotions just with your face because they didn't have, you know.
Well,
sound,
one of the things that the actors in England, of course, have over us is their repertory system.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've got people that go into acting over there and they're doing a new play every couple of weeks, and they have tremendous stage experience.
I agree.
Where a lot of our TV actors don't have that kind of well-rounded experience. So they're a lot better actors. You talk about learning how to react properly.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in a play, it's all live, man.
Yeah,
You
well,
know?
there's
They're
no
not cutting the
safety
scene.
net. Yeah. But anyway, we're kind of at the end of our hour here.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity.
This was a lot of fun.
Thank you for having me here.
We'll have you back again when Daryl's here, and the three of us will have a good time.
Well, we'll figure out how I can fit myself in if I...
Well, even if you just come on to talk about, you know, maybe you went to see a couple recent films and you want to just chime in, or if there's another, you know, actor you want to discuss. You know, we've been having a lot of theme shows, so if there's another one down the road that you want to talk about, you're welcome to come on.
I appreciate the opportunity.
This has been the first episode out of 90 where, we've had another person on the show, but in place of Daryl, where he hasn't been here. So, but he thought it would be very important for you and I to do
well,
the show.
You please tell Daryl.
You were missed, though. It would have been interesting to see Daryl's reactions here, but...
tell him thank you for letting me sit in.
Yeah, you did a good
Not
job.
necessarily for him, but with him.
Yeah.
He was here in spirit.
Exactly.
And I certainly hope to be back again.
Yeah, we'll have you back
Make
again.
some type of a contribution.
Exactly.
Thanks again, Chris. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. This was a great conversation. And so I just want to state that pretty much all the films we discussed, pretty much most of Clint Eastwood's career is available for you to watch if you want to watch it. It's all on Amazon. You can watch it all on there. That's probably your best spot to find a lot of these films outside of getting it from your library or whatever. So it's there for you to watch. We encourage you to digest his early work and to really understand why he is the icon that he is. And then to recap, we both highly recommend Searching. Out in theaters right now. Definitely go check that out. And we'll be back next week with another episode 91. Daryl, God willing, will be back. Hopefully he'll be released from the psychiatric facility. And
We're
hopefully
not
he'll
sure
be
that.
manageable.
We're not sure.
Well, yeah, there's a chance.
He may
maybe
come
not.
back in a straitjacket.
Yeah, and he's been in a straitjacket on the air before.
Has he really?
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed that
I know, you
segment.
missed that. It was actually very effective. But anyway, either way, we will have some form of entertainment for you the following week.
So you might say he had his hands tied.
He had his hands tied. Boom.
Oh, sorry.
See you guys next week. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Take care.
Road. Yeah, where we going now? Yeah, let's just,